speaking of crazy solutions, we had the idea of doing an episode on the new movie. We want to start hitting some hot stuff coming out. Hot on the griddle type pop culture. So we wanted to do the Nosferatu movie, and we are going to do it. And my crazy solution, my kids all got really sick, like some viral throat thing. We thought it was strep throat. Turns out something sort of like strep throat, but different. So they're carriers of some sort of hyper contagious pathogen that will contaminate any other child that comes within a mile or whatever it is. So nobody will babysit my kids, and good faith, I can't let anybody babysit my kids. And the thing will last for like a week. So I wasn't going to be able to get it out and see Nosferatu in time. So I had some friends that gave me the ability to view it alternatively, an alternative method to watch it. I'm not going to say what it is, but it was quite the little procedure to try to get this thing working and see it and watch it. And I didn't get, it wasn't as good quality as I could have seen in the theater, obviously, but I did get to see it. So me and Mike watched the 2024 film Nosferatu from Robert Eggers. That is really kind of controversial film right now. And what's on everybody's
from No Eggers.
Yeah. We might want to edit that one out. That's so funny. But that name was accurate with the film. So let's get right into it. We're yakking here. Mike, what did you think about the movie?
So overall, I mean, vampires and monster movies and like monster stories and stuff like that are not really my bag, right? Like I like horror and all the rest of it. I even like supernatural horror quite a lot. But the sort of like Victorian, and I even like Gothic stories. You know what I mean? Like I loved the Mackin collection that you put out through the Bizarre Archives. I just love Arthur Mackin, right? I love the folk horror. I love the the traditional kind of horror, Gothic stuff and everything like that. I love the vibe. But the monster movies, like the monsters, I don't find that scary. As much as I'm all about the ancestral worldview and everything like that, I am kind of a creature of modernity in some ways. It's very hard for me to kind of get into that mind space that might have been like scary maybe 200 years ago or something like that. But overall, so I mean, I watched the movie and I went home after, and some movies that you watch and you keep turning it over in your mind, like later, say for example, something like The Exorcist. I watched that when I was a grown-ass man for the first time. So I'm not like a little kid getting scared by it. And I couldn't sleep for a week after watching The Exorcist. There was like scenes that I just kept turning over in my head that were like just weird and creeped me the fuck out, right? I didn't really get that with Nosferatu. So the scariness factor wasn't like as much there. But on the other hand, as a piece of aesthetic art, as like something that's beautiful, or at least that is aesthetically charged to look at, it's a 10 out of a 10. You know what I mean? It's absolutely like, nothing can really stand up to it kind of thing. So I would say that is like amazing. Like, as far as like that element of the movie, it's kind of, it's really unimpeachable. Robert Eggers is great for this, right? We got this with The Northman. We got this with a number of other movies that he's done. He's just a master when it comes to the aesthetic elements of film. He's great when it comes to like, making like actually like literally dark films, like they look dark on the screen, but they're also dark in their subject matter and what they're doing and the themes that they're putting across and everything like that. And as we alluded to there, the casting is really good. It's not wokeified. It's not, bending the knee, kissing the ring of like, Hollyweird of the modern era or anything like that. Everything is set in, 19th century Germany or thereabouts, the surrounds. And everything looks like it's set in that era and time and place. And it's beautiful and amazing. And just as a piece of art to look at, it's really second to none. I thought it was amazing. And there was some pretty cool themes that go surprisingly deep below the surface into, some of the ancestral analysis kind of thing we're going to do here on Culture Dads like we usually do. There's definitely a lot of food for thought there. So I thought overall, before we get into some of those deeper themes, overall that the movie was great. It's probably one of the best movies that you'll see this year. I didn't find it all that scary, but I did find it to be something wonderful to watch. I thought it was like a really beautiful production.
Yeah, I agree with some of that. So I actually also I'm the opposite with I love creature features. I think the creature feature is such a wonderful genre. It's something that's just immortal, and the creature feature does freak me out. I get freaked out by creature features, whether it's stuff from the ocean, especially whether it's monsters, whether it's something, just whatever, anything that's monstrous. I get scared pretty easily from films. I'm actually a huge little bitch when it comes to films. There are certain movies that I can't watch before bed. Like I can't watch this before bed. I'll be up all night. I'll be like getting completely paranoid and weird and start thinking I'm seeing things. I have a big imagination. I get easily immersed into things. I have a very strong disgust reflex. So things that are too gruesome or gross, I can't watch it. Too much gore, I can't watch it. I'll turn it off if it's too like gore in general. Like it depends how it works. You know what I mean? Stuff where people are getting their skin ripped off slowly and just like gore porn. I also think that's lazy. I think gore
it is
porn.
Lazy.
Yeah, like everybody,
human centipede kind of thing or whatever, where it's just like a snuff film or whatever. It's not scary. It's meant to activate your disgust response, which I guess me being a creature of modernity is a little bit numb because I don't get that from movies much anymore. But if you do, there's a lot of movies that are not much beyond that,
Yeah, like folks are really loving this Terrifier series. I haven't watched it. I'm not going to watch it. I know what it is. I have no interest in that. I thought that was a fall off from the real, like original, like vintage slasher movies. It's a remake of the 90s and late 80s sequels of slasher movies.
Oh yeah, that's the one where they got the insane clown thing again.
Oh right? My god,
again.
It's another fucking clown who's ripping people apart. There's something supernatural about him. Doesn't really get explained until later in the movies. And lots of people die. And there's a last girl that survives. And big fucking deal. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see people getting ripped apart. I want to see a good story. You know what I mean? And if people get ripped apart during the delivery of this story, let's go. But that's how I feel. But I did not think that Nosferatu, some of the complaints I was reading in reviews, I went and I read the reviews before I watched this film, and some of the complaints were like, it's just gore for the sake of gore. I'm like, where's the gore? There's like maybe 3 scenes where there's gore. It's just over-sexualized gore and blah, blah, blah. It's like, there's like 2 scenes where you see like 3 seconds of boob, and then there's like you get to see some dudes like sitting naked on the floor being a weirdo doing an occult ritual, and you see like the top of his butt crack, and then there's like one scene where he's like leaking blood out of his face, and like it's not a gory
much,
It's very, very little. But anyway, going back to the film, my overall take is, first of all, and there's going to be some people get triggered by this. I'm not a real huge Eggers fan. I like him. I don't love him. And it's not because I think that he's bad. I think he's a brilliant director, and I think his movies are very, very good. It's just, for some reason, it's just not, it doesn't tickle my pickle. It doesn't hit my taste. It's not my cup of tea for some reason. There's something like The Northman. I liked it. I was getting a little bit, I was struggling with it a little bit. It's not even length, because I'll watch a long ass movie and sit through the whole thing. But for some reason, Eggers, the way that he paces and does delivery, I struggle with it when it's usually going into the third act, the end of the second, going into the third act.
All of his movies are like slow burn, aren't they?
Yeah, they're slow burn. I like The Witch. I think the Witch was good. I didn't like The Lighthouse because I don't like black and white. I think that black and white is kind of a weird pastiche. I like color. So it was just like, all right, this is too much. The slow burn Eggers film plus black and white, not even anything for me to look at. I was like, nah, I can't even do this. But The Witch was a tremendous movie. Northman was a tremendous movie. He's an excellent director. It's just a taste thing. It's not real. It's not a real critique. But I do have a couple critiques of Nosferatu. Why I didn't love it.
Before you get into those, I just want to quickly mention something here with the critiques that the libtoads had, that you sent me a bunch of them from Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. I don't know what it was. But they were all basically like these people kind of saying like that the vampire was kind of like a sexual predator for this young girl and everything like that.
Yeah, he's a vampire.
Yeah, they were really sort of incensed about how there's like pedophilic undertones and stuff like that. I was actually a little bit proud of the lib on that account. I thought it was like kind of healthy that he picked up on, or not that there are, I don't think that's actually in there, but that it's like, there's one line that they're at least willing not to cross. You know what I mean? It's the whole thing where, after all the like sexual deviancies that like the liberal has like, tolerated and celebrated in modernity, that's kind of like the last frontier, LGBTQP plus, right?
Yeah.
But he's like, the libtoad's like drawing a line on that. And, I don't know. I thought it was like, oh, great. Well, can't expect much out of these people, but at the very least, they're willing not to go there. So yeah,
I think you're giving him a little too much credit. Like if he was like a pedophile and like going after little boys, they wouldn't have an issue at all.
Yeah, no, they'd be celebrating it. They'd be like, it's whatever, it's stunning and brave.
Yeah, their whole beef with it is that the vampire is very old, and he's going after young girls, and these are all like 40 post-wall roasties that are like mad about becoming
old.
femcells. Yeah. This is their newest crusade, that any guy that like wants to date a girl that's like younger than them is now a pedophile, right? So this is their whole thing, right? So if what you're talking about is how it is, then I agree, but I suspect more
a bit more cynical,
more pernicious intentions behind them, right? It's all just like cope and self-justification and like all this kind of shit. But
probably it is. I try to see the best in people, but Dave's probably right.
And then some of the reviews were like Christian church ladies that have somehow transported from 1985 and are like, this is a movie of the devil and like all this kind of shit. Like I had to pray after I saw. It's like, lady, it's a vampire movie. Yeah, like it's not even like a new, like it was just nuts to me that people thought this is a very classic. If you watch this and watch the old Nosferatu movie, there's not a lot different. This is a very true to source retelling of the Nosferatu movie and also of Dracula. of Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is a Stokerian vampire to a T. This being Nosferatu that is in Eggers' film.
It's interesting that it's a remake of a German knockoff of Dracula, right? Like they changed it enough that it was kind of a different story, so they couldn't be sued. Although there is some question about that, like whether they actually were trying to like avoid that, or whether they wanted to actually tell a different story. But in any case, it is the Dracula story, but like changed substantially, I would say. This is like a remake of a knockoff. I think that's interesting that it's like, it's kind of like the source material to whatever, like two sections removed or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a few things this film does brilliantly. The shadows and the lighting, and obviously it's a very visually stunning film. It is also a really great period piece. The way that they talk, the costumes, the sets, you feel like you are in 18 something Victorian. It's in Germany actually. It's I got an extra level of immersion because when I went to see it in the theater, I was sitting behind this old couple, and I shit you not, bro. One of them had like mothballs in their pocket or something like that. I kept smelling that throughout the whole movie, and it was just like, it just like felt like I was right there in that like old fucking Edwardian, or no, I guess like much earlier than that, whatever, in that like pre-Victorian kind of era of like old castles and musty drawing rooms and shit like that. Like it just really felt like I was like, is this like 4D movie experience? Is this like a new thing or whatever? Smell-o-vision. Smells, yeah.
But anyway, sorry, go on. You were saying about how it's a very visually beautiful film. It's a very aesthetically kino experience.
Yeah, it's a very, very aesthetic film. It is very gothic. It does a very good job of capturing the gothic vibe, as well as that era of German expressionist film. It really, really has that in its DNA. He did a magnificent job of capturing those feelings. There's something kind of quirky with the audio. I had a version that wasn't really the best quality, but it was substantially worse than other ones for some reason. And I've heard other people who went to the movie say that the audio is kind of whatever. And also, I heard some people say, and I actually agree with this, that the music didn't deliver as much as it could have. So
yeah, I would agree with that. It was there. It wasn't like out of place, but at the same time, it was also, I don't know, it didn't stand out, I guess.
Yeah, it didn't stand out in a film like this with an ancient old Lord vampire, as vampires are supposed to be depicted. I am a purist when it comes to the vampire archetype. This is a vampire. How Eggers shows the vampire is how I like vampires to be. I don't like other stuff. There's a couple others that I was a little bit sympathetic to. 30 Days of Night. There's a few others that I thought were interesting. However, overall, I don't like, especially not Twilight vampires. I don't think vampires should be sexy and attractive and pretty. They should be Dracula.
They should be rotting. they should be undead.
They should be rotting, undead, demonic. Like they should be some sort of supernatural, hideous incarnation of evil is what they should be. And this does bring that, right? He does also, there's a motif in the original with the shadow claw, right? The shadow claw coming and the shadow preceding the appearance of the vampire, because in Bram Stoker refers it to as a shadow quite a bit. There's a lot of like kind of shadow motifs in the source material, so that translates very well. There's quite a few really brilliant ways that he incorporates the shadow motif in there. I thought the dialogue was good. Me and Mike talked about this. But there wasn't really any banger lines that really, whatever. It felt period. It felt like it was in place. There wasn't really a whole lot of. It was very minimalist as far as the dialogue goes. But even though it was minimalist, if you have minimalist dialogue, you have to have banger dialogue, and this didn't deliver that, in my opinion. It was good. I just didn't love it. Maybe I'm being too hard on it. With like I said, with the music, when I see that the vampire archetype that I love, I want to hear some sort of like gothic organ. Dun, 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 dun. I want to hear it. I want to hear the E, right? And there's a few little pieces that kind of get the, but it didn't. I wasn't sated. I wasn't sated with what I wanted out of it. The movie was it feels longer than it's 2 hours, which is a long film. It felt longer to me than it was. I was going into the third act. I was like struggling to keep my attention. That's also me because I have short attention span. But I've watched long movies many times and have been immersed the entire time. This one I had some trouble going into some places. There were some plot lines that I wish would have been followed a little bit more that kind of just got abandoned. There was I wish there was a little bit more as far as like lore. We're going to be given spoilers, so warning. But there's parts that I wish they could have went into the lore a little bit more. I don't like autistic lore dumps, but I also there are times that I want a little bit more. I wanted to know a little bit more about, open the old tome with the weird occultic symbols on it and translate it and tell me a little bit more about the folklore of it. Let's see a little bit more of these weird rituals that his sidekick is doing. Let's hear a little bit more about that, relationship between them. Let's hear a little bit more about the nature of the prophecy. And I wanted a little bit more. They were doing kind of like there's kind of like an exorcism type scene, and I wanted to kind of go into it a little bit more. I wanted to hear a little bit more. I don't know. It was like it gave me what I wanted, but not all the way. It was like it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, there's I hate to be like too autistically like critiquing stuff because this is part of why I get like the vibe from those like Rotten Tomatoes critiques where it's like people just trying to find things that they don't like, and I try not to do that, and I don't think that's what you're doing either, for sure. But so I don't want to like reach too much. I was fairly satisfied as far as like the movie goes and everything. Visually, it's a 10 out of 10. Story wise, maybe not quite. In fact, it's far from a 10 out of 10, but it's still pretty good. I guess, I would say that there's some parts because I'm really very much all about the plot construction. Writing a very nice, like tightly wound plot is something that I really appreciate. And there's a few things in the movie where it was just something that was there but didn't go anywhere. Like, for example, the part where the Willem Dafoe character was crazy at the very beginning, it served no purpose. You know what I mean? It served no narrative purpose for that to be the case. I mean, maybe that was maybe that was the way it was in the original or something, but I guess it just didn't serve a purpose there either because, I'm like, I really appreciate as a writer and a writer of fiction, which I don't do much of anymore, but I used to, the whole principle of Chekhov's gun, right? Where it's like, if something is there, then it has to be there. It has to like actually have a meaning or something. It can't just be like a piece of detail that's just there for color. I don't know. I mean, not all writers adhere to that, and some writers kind of like don't like that, but I think that's generally pretty cool. It's good advice. And there was a few things in the movie where, it was just like detail that didn't actually add anything, and in some cases it's like just adds runtime. I mean, if it's something like a second where you kind of like see this like weird like ritual or some detail or whatever, that's fine. But yeah, that was something that didn't really go anywhere. I actually thought that the character, I forget what his name is. What is it? I think it's Herr Knock. Anyway, the guy who was the employer of Thomas in the movie. I thought that he was a little bit overwrought, like maybe overacted perhaps by that character. Yeah, there could have been more. You could got more from him or whatever, but for some reason the actual actor that portrayed him just kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. I don't know. Maybe just like a bit miscast. I'm not sure. But in any case, yeah, I mean, those are kind of like minor critiques, I would say. Overall, I thought it was like quite good, and definitely from a stylistic perspective, from a like purely like aesthetic experience, I thought it was great. But there's also, I mean, it kind of does a lot of things right in terms of what a horror movie is supposed to do, in terms of what a story that involves horror is supposed to do. There could have been more of this. I guess that's a critique too, but there's a strong folk horror element in it, right? Like I think parts of the movie, like you're there for the vampire, you're there to get into the castle and to like see the guy, Thomas, kind of like lose his marbles or whatever when he encounters Count Orlok. And slowly be like unable to get away and be like sort of enveloped into his dark world and all that. That's what you're there for. But part of the sort of like sketching in the background and the details that I love is the folk horror elements. I love the parts where he was like going into the village and he saw the gypsies, and they're kind of like, they're a little bit weird and doing these crazy dances and everything. And then they have the rituals in the forest later where they had like the virgin riding on the horse and everything. I love that shit. I think that was really cool. That was some color that I thought really added something to the movie. I want more of that. Of course I do. I mean, I'm a pagan, right? I love that kind of stuff. It's just like cool. The exact things that the church ladies are pissed off about. That's what I want. I want more of that, right? So I thought that was really cool. And the folk horror element in it, it was strong enough. There was like a reasonable amount of that. And I think that this is sort of archetypal for horror movies, right? Because horror movies are kind of like archetypally outside of the city. I mean, yes, of course, you've got like horror movies like The Exorcist, which they're about outsideness, but they are in an urban environment and everything like that. But for me, I think the kind of archetypal horror story is something that is outside of an urban environment, right? And I think that this is part of why somebody like an H.P. Lovecraft and cosmic horror in general is so effective, is that it really puts you outside of civilization. Ultimately, like Count Orlok is just like he has no place in the city, right? He's just like as far away from that as he can get, and like both geographically but also spiritually and everything. Like it's weird when he comes into the city, and at the end of the movie where it's like you see the sun rise and like the sun rise over the city and all the buildings and everything like that, you're just like, this guy doesn't belong here. And of course, with the sun rising and killing him and everything, of course he doesn't belong there. That's why he's killed by it. But he is kind of outside of the social order, completely outside of that. And I guess if, I had to make a more substantial critique than just like, oh, you could have cut this or whatever, I would say there needs to be more of that outsideness. I want more of that deep, dark folk like ritual and the satanic like more from, like, as Dave mentioned, I want more of the sort of Necronomicon like lore from that book and everything. I think that would be really cool. More of that stuff would have done the movie better, I think. Yeah, no, I agree. But all of that stuff aside, overall I would give this movie like 4 out of 5. I think it was a very strong movie. It was a very good movie. I'm just kind of like nitpick. I was really looking forward to it quite a bit, and I wanted to really be satiated, and I wasn't 100% satiated. That's pretty much what it is. I was but it was a faithful recreation of Nosferatu. I think that some people are like, why did he do that or whatever? Nosferatu is such an important film, right? It was such a humongous film. It was so influential. And what Eggers pretty much did was give, I don't want to, the word modern audiences is such a nasty word, but when I say modern audiences, I mean like young people that might not have ever heard of it and wouldn't be able to sit through a silent black and white film. It gave them a reason to appreciate Nosferatu, and like show them what a vampire actually looks like, and not freaking the underworld movies or Blade or the modern crap that is new vampire movies. It was I think it was almost as good as Coppola's Dracula. I thought it was a really just in fact I like Eggers Nosferatu better than Coppola's Dracula. Coppola's Dracula is much more he's much more eloquent and charming, and he's a little bit more, he's also a little bit more supernatural, whereas Nosferatu is a more bestial. He's more bestial. He's more he's grosser. He's darker. He's scarier. Nosferatu is scarier. I thought that Skarsgård, the guy that played Nosferatu, did an absolutely tremendous job. That guy is excellent. Excellent. He was the new Stephen King It. He was Baron Harkonnen in Dune. This guy plays bad guys, man. This guy is like the new, I don't know, the new Gary Oldman or something. I don't know. That's good. That's a good comparison there. Yeah, it's actually because Gary Oldman played Dracula. Actually, so it's like a passing of the torch or something like that. But anyway, Skarsgård did a absolutely tremendous job playing this monster, because everything from the way that his labored breathing, this monster comes off. Nosferatu comes off as feeble and frail, but he's not. He's on the edge of life and death. He's kind of something, as Mike said, that is not of this world. He's actually, Nosferatu isn't just a character. He is the other side of a curse. He is a curse. He's not just this is something that the Normoids were complete. Nosferatu didn't have any character development or anything. That's because he's a symbol, right? He's like a tail type. He's there to represent things. And what are they expecting? Is he gonna learn something over the course of the movie? Is he gonna overcome his inner demons? And this is what I mean when I'm talking about critique for the sake of critique, right? Yeah. And also modern film watchers are just expecting character development everywhere. They just want every character to overcome and every character to have their fucking glow up or whatever the jerk off shit they're saying. They want every character to just go to therapy and overcome their traumas and just become brat at the end. It's what they want.
because they can't stop projecting themselves onto every single fucking character, every single thing. Everything has to be about them. They don't want to be entertained. They want to be validated. So anything that doesn't validate them, there's it's not enough character development. He's a fucking demon, you dumb cunt. He's not going to develop shit. He's part of a curse. He's going to drink blood. He's going to carry out evil demonic machinations. He's going to mass murder people. He's going to spread plagues. And he's going to fulfill his destiny. That's what this motherfucker's going to do. He lives in a dark, old, ancient castle, and he sleeps in a damn coffin. What do you want from the guy? Huh? He's going to go see his therapist and talk about the trauma of how his fucking mom yelled at him too much. My mother was too abusive towards me, and now I drink blood because of it. It's like, fuck you, you dumb bitch. He's a fucking vampire. Oh my God.
Yeah. They kind of like misunderstand the nature of horror and the nature of storytelling ultimately, like, because it's not autobiography. It's a story about a fucking vampire, right? Like, this is an ancient monster from like folklore going back as far as can be imagined, right? And of course, he's not going to have character development because he's basically a force of nature. He's like a tiger or something. The tiger doesn't go to therapy. The tiger doesn't like grow and like realize his trauma or anything. Like, he doesn't go to a psychologist or whatever. It's a fucking tiger, right? And this is why, I don't know, I just like, it's kind of silly, these critiques about horror, especially horror. Like, there's certain kinds of genres where that would actually kind of make sense, right? Like tragedy, even though there kind of aren't tragedies anymore, which is really too bad, but there's kind of reasons for that. In tragedy, you're expecting that kind of thing. You're expecting character development and growth, or in some cases a fall or whatever it is. Because what tragedy does, and sort of the more elevated, like dramas, modern dramas on film, what they're doing is they're sort of showing what happens when human morality breaks down, right? When the morality of the city or civilization, shall we say, the morality of civilization, when it falls apart, here are all the things that happen, all the tragic consequences, all the heroism, all the growth, all the decay, everything like that. But horror is different. Horror shows what happens when civilization is no longer even in the picture, right? When morality doesn't hold and you're just dealing with a force of nature, right? And this is why, tragedy kind of comes and goes, this sort of thing, like where drama, it has its sort of like peaks and troughs, like after Shakespeare and the, efflorescence of drama in the Elizabethan age, you kind of get a drop off of it. Like, it's not much going on there. And then you have to sort of await the invention of the novel for that to kind of come back and whatever. But horror is like forever. Horror is being told, everywhere all the time in, dark places and in rural areas and in the folklore of our sort of like deepest ancestral nature. Tragedy is kind of within civilization, and civilization comes and goes, but horror is outside of civilization, which is why folk horror is so good and why it's sort of almost along with cosmic horror, it's almost sort of like the archetype of the horror story, right?
Yeah.
Like tragedy or drama or whatever is like having your throat slit by your mother, something, a total transgression against the social order. But horror is having your throat slit by a tiger or a vampire. You know what I mean? Horror is entirely outer in nature. Count Orlok is a beast, not a man. And there's even a line. There's a line from the movie where he says, "I am an appetite, nothing more." Right? Like, there's no growth involved with that, right? He's like a walking stomach, and that he's only out there. He's not going to relate to Thomas or Ellen in like the way that you would relate to another human being. He's going to relate to them in the way that you would relate to a piece of meat. You know, like there's no growth in the relationship between you and the steak. It's just like, you know, you eat it and that's all. Like it's a predator prey relationship.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're kind of belaboring the point, but I think it's important to underscore that these kind of critiques they're just so wide of the mark that it's like you don't even understand what a horror movie is in the first place. Much less,
my God, the evil guy was evil.
Yeah, like what the fuck? What are you expecting? It's like any other folklore, right? It's flat characters, it's archetypes interacting with other archetypes. Yeah, there's some room for growth in certain of the characters, but not all of them for sure. You know what I mean? So I don't know. These stories that have these flat character arcs, these archetypal characters that are basically like the hero, the damsel in distress, the beast, you know, that like those kind of things, they're really sort of out of fashion and out of step with like, you know, today with modernity. And so much the worse for modernity, because those are the stories that keep getting told and retold forever. You know what I mean? And this is probably part of the reason why Hollywood can't do anything except for a fucking remake. You know, because they have no stories to tell anymore, because it's all whatever. I won't belabor it anymore. I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of critique of modernity, I felt that Nosferatu was I don't know. I think this was Eggers doing. How Nosferatu, the film itself, was a critique of the beginnings of modernity. For folks that aren't familiar, in this time period, in the 1800s, was when they started simultaneously getting really science brained. Right, they were like, everything is science, and they kind of like really got into scientific materialism and shit like that, while simultaneously being hyper Protestant and also having an undercurrent of stupid occultic seances and tarot cards. And
there's also the time of romanticism too, right?
Yeah, it's also the time of romanticism. So this film, there's quite a few parts in this that lend to a sympathetic view towards a traditional look at the world and a critique of modernity. There are a few parts that outline this in the dialogue and in the story and everything like that. The first one that stood out to me was this idea when Thomas goes, which by the way, Eggers has something with the name Thomas. There's like a Thomas in every single film. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. Every film has a Thomas. But anyway, Thomas goes to see Count Orlok, right? And one of the first things that he says to him is when they sit down, he's like, I have a question about the local practices of, you know, these people. He's like, I saw them open a coffin and drive, you know, kill a guy or something like that, right? He saw like what he saw to be some sort of ancient, weird pagan practice, and he was kind of spooked by it. And Count Orlok is completely on his side. And he says pretty much, he's like, yeah, that's just the superstitious, stupid shit of these people. He's like, a man of your repute and a man of your education is probably freaked out by such things. And he's like, well, what is it or whatever? And Orlok gets mad and like yells at him. And he's like, I can't wait until I come to your city and get away from such superstitions, right? He paints these people as like they're, and he's on Thomas's side. He can't wait to join enlightened society, right? So Thomas, then they goes into the whole Thomas his interaction with Orlok and Orlok drinking his chest blood and all this kind of stuff. I actually really like that addition that he drank from the chest and not from the neck. That was it made it more bestial and interesting. Because the neck bite is kind of like a sensual, sexual thing, and the chest bite is like animal stuff. So, anyway, going forward, there are a few other things that kind of stand out as anti-modernity. The guy that gets like the most traumatized, the most hurt is, I can't remember, if it's Thomas's friend or brother or something like that. But the fellow that lets Thomas and his wife stay with them, he has got a family, 2 little girls or whatever. He loans Thomas money. He helps Thomas, right? He's like, he's like a big brother figure or whatever. He's got Friedrich. Friedrich, is that his name? Yeah. Friedrich's got it going on. He's got money. He's got a beautiful family, everything. And he's a little bit tired of the whole charade. When Ellen falls ill, he tries to get rid of her. He's like, I'm tired of hearing about this. I want this crap out of my house. I want to go back to normal. I'm done. My generosity has met its limit. But what Friedrich, his whole thing is when they start to unravel that this isn't just a disease or hysteria or some sort of mental illness, this is the work of some kind of demonic evil force or something like that. He doesn't believe it. He never believes it until like the very, very end. And he pays the price, like the worst price of all of it. Count Orlok comes and kills his whole family, like drinks the blood of his little daughters, drinks the blood of his wife, like gives the diseases his wife and inflicts her with the plague that he brings. That's another thing. When Orlok comes, he brings plague, right? He's not just a guy. He is a curse, right? And he is a curse that is doomed to play out. Like he just like everybody else in the film, Orlok is just as at the mercy of fate as everybody else. The curse must play out, right? And he pursues it without question. He's so addicted to this. He's so incited by this woman. He's so enchanted by her that he will not stop until he has her as his bride. But having her as his bride is his doom, right? And so what this is this I can't remember the name of the motif is, but there's this like the sacrificial virgin, which is in the beginning too, right? You have the sacrificial virgin in the beginning of the movie. They have her on the horse when Thomas goes to visit the Carpathian Mountains. And she is also this sacrificial virgin, where she from the time that she's born, she is linked to this demon, and the entirety of her purpose is to destroy him and to send him back to the darkness until it is time for him to come again. So his reign of terror is over, right? So what happens is Orlok must consummate his union with this woman. He can't stop. He doesn't care who he kills. He doesn't view humans as his equal. He will kill them, drink them. It doesn't matter. The scene with the little girls. I usually absolutely hate movies where they hurt kids. I can't watch it. If a kid or a baby gets hurt, I turn it off. This was done in such a way that it wasn't as jarring. I mean, it was very jarring and uncomfortable, but it wasn't as in your face. It wasn't trying to deliver the disgust and uncomfortability of kids dying. It was like, here, dead kids. It was like, look at the lengths of this creature's evil, right? So it's kind of obscured. You don't really see it. You hear the kids scream, and then you see him drinking of their forms and tossing them to the side and hearing them thud on the floor, which is, pretty grotesque, and it was jarring, but it was done in a tasteful way, if that kind of scene can be done tastefully. So what happens is Orlok doesn't care at all about these human beings. He brings them plague. He says, one by one, I will kill and torture everybody and everything that you love. And eventually the woman says, or decides, like, this is my fate. And I have to die in order to save everybody and save the ones that I love. Right. So the There's one scene where Willem Dafoe, who is sort of like the Van Helsing type character, who's the learned guy, learned in the ways of the supernatural, who tries to convince the other guy, like, look, this is supernatural thing. You're gonna have to learn this. There's no other way to explain. He's like, no, there has to be a scientific explanation. There has to be blah blah blah. And that guy doesn't listen at all until he pays the ultimate price. He buys into modernity. He can't get out of modernity. He pays the biggest price. And then there's a line where Willem Dafoe is talking to Ellen, the woman, and he's talking to her about this kind of stuff. And he's like, I'm sorry that they change you up. I'm sorry that they did this to you. They think that there's some sort of medical malady. Really what it is that you're special. And in another time, you would be a priestess of Isis or something like that. But in this strange modern world, you're XYZ or whatever.
Yeah.
And so what happens is after this, she accepts her fate, as she must make union with the beast in order to save the people from the curse. And so what happens is, at the end, she calls to Orlok, brings him there, consummates their union. The sun rises, Orlok dies, and she dies, and the sun rises and the curse is lifted. So the whole entire movie is kind of a shot at modernity. It's like, listen, you dum-dums that think science explains everything. Now you have to reckon with something that science doesn't explain, something that's very ancient and dark and evil and doesn't care about your humanist ideals. It will feast on you and disease you and make your life absolutely hell until it gets what it wants. But what it wants is beyond actual just want. It is purely just an appetite that cannot stop, because it is something that is other. And all involved with this thing are at the mercy of fate, which science also cannot explain. So the union between Nosferatu and Ellen is sort of like this very strange, fated thing. The beast and the sacrificial virgin. And well, she's not a virgin anymore, but it gets implied during the film that Nosferatu gets incensed and pissed off because she marries, right? So that's a big old take between that and in the film from me.
Yeah, I think that's right. That basically the film has to sort of endorse an alternative to the scientific materialist worldview, right? Like, horror has to do this in some way, even if it's something like Lovecraft, who himself seemingly held a scientific materialist worldview. The way that he deals with it, Lovecraft, is by saying that there are things beyond any reckoning that science could ever, even in principle, get hold of, right? There are things that go beyond that. But the vampire movie, the folk horror, or the traditional horror tale, does it a different way. It goes in a different direction. It basically says that there are supernatural things that pre-exist science, that pre-exist your ideas of the world being, modern or whatever it is, philosophical, perhaps going a little further back. That all that stuff falls away in the stark, naked reality of evil in this world, of the supernatural. That the supernatural is and always will be beyond anything you can imagine, and that it has been there since the very beginning. This is kind of what horror has to do, and like, it has to give you the absolute other. It has to give you something that is so other, that is so outside, that you just can't deny it, that there's no way for you to actually relate to it in a social kind of way. And I think that this is kind of why, when horror is done properly, and for all of our, little critiques about the movie, this could have been done better and that could have been done better, it's very faithful to the supernatural horror tale. And I think that the fact that it is faithful to the supernatural horror tale is probably at the bottom of a lot of these persnickety kind of Rotten Tomatoes critiques, right? Is that ultimately what it does is it gives you an absolute other to hate with no way to relate to it. And that's very uncomfortable for people in modernity that have been taught that othering anything is, beyond the pale. So
Yeah.
I think that's right. I think that's a good take, basically.
Yeah. And another problem that they have is they just don't believe in evil, right? That's why I made fun of him. Oh my God, the evil guy is evil. Yeah, it's a problem for you because you don't believe in evil, and you're being faced with this idea of evil, this archetype of evil, and it's just rattling your entire worldview. And because you are a liberal and you have to project everything about your worldview into everything that you see, and everything must bend a knee to it, you can't cope. You have to cope with this, right? This idea that you're looking at something, you're watching something that is outside of what you believe to be universally true everywhere across the entirety of the cosmos and all of time. This is why they have to revise history. This is why they have to. They can't stomach anything that is outside of them, outside of what they think. So it's really, and the vampire is a very, this is why I really dislike the subversion of the vampire archetype via like writers like Anne Rice, and then later on with Twilight and stuff like this, because the vampire is really an important archetype in modern storytelling. Starting, there's some before Bram Stoker, but Bram Stoker kind of codifies the vampire archetype in Dracula. And many things can be put upon the vampire. The vampire can this is why the vampire rings so true and continues on, is because that kind of that outsideness, the predatory aspect of the vampire, what the vampire represents, are things that will exist in every single era, no matter how far. And I am not at all surprised by Prague libtode people being grossed out by it, because they see the world as forever getting better, and everything in the back and everything before is gross. And in their utopian view, this type of archetype, just there's no place for it. It can't exist. They spend a lot of their time trying to dispel and gaslight and lie about the evil machinations of shadowy figures, whether we're talking about certain groups of people, we're talking about corporations, we're talking about this or that. They will never ever side with this idea that there are human beings that because of their innate evil do rotten things, and using great power, work from the shadows. They have to boil it down to systems and abstracts and stuff like, it's not actually, this group of people or whatever. It's, this is just, environmental things. This is just socioeconomic factors. This is just this. It has to be that. So when they see, look, Dracula, they're like, it triggers them, right? But the vampire is such an important figure in this, and why it's so immortal is because back in the day, the vampire is the devil, right? And then later on, vampires could be capitalists. Vampires could be CEOs. Vampires could be globalists. Vampires could be, whoever. The vampire could be any of these, but the vampire is also something that's within humanity in itself, right? The vampire is the bestial aspect of the human appetite, right? It is the ape beneath the skin of the civilized man, right? He feasts. He is horned, right? He's consumptive and kind of erotic, and he is disease. He is like all of these different. He is greed. And also he is ancient, right? You can't really bring up where he comes from because it's always shrouded. In Nosferatu the film, the only thing it sort of talks about his origin is where he brings out the infernal contract for Thomas, and he says, "What's this language?" He's like, "It is the language of my ancestors." Right? That's the only thing that you kind of get from where he comes from. And the vampire is what was I going to say? I had another take. The vampire is also Promethean. The vampire is also the Faustian man, because the vampire has relinquished his humanity in order to gain eternal life, or immortal life, I should say, not eternal, immortal life. He has exchanged his humanity for immortality and becomes this hideous, disfigured monster. He becomes a monster, right, at the expense of the pact that he has made. So, and it's something that it's sins of the father. It goes on and on. Language of my ancestors, right? That implies that his bloodline has carried this curse for quite a long time. And this is also very problematic for liberals, because they think that all humans are completely modular, and there's no such thing as sins of the father, and there's no such thing as biodeterminism, and there's no such thing as inherited things, unless it's some kind of inherited systematic abstraction, like transgenerational privilege, or like something like that, right? They can't. It's outside of what they think. But the vampire is both outside and inside, which makes him a really important, paradoxical at times, archetype in modern storytelling, because it reminds us what outside evil looks like. It reminds us that there are personages that have motivations that are not good for us, that we could be the fly equation, the fly part of the spider and the fly equation. What is good for the spider is bad for the fly, right? The vampire is a spider and we are the fly. It reminds us of that. And there's also a mirror. There's also a mirror for us to look into what happens when we trade the good parts of humanity for things like immortality and everything. The vampire is effectively a transhumanist, right? So there's quite a bit in there, and also it's also a very Christian motif. There is pagan motifs, but at its core, and its core is a Christian motif, that the Christian views things like lust and greed and these types of appetites as leading to your more primal drives, leading you towards like rotten bad behavior and to damnation and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there that you said. I think that perhaps on a sort of deeper unconscious level, the libtode is made very uncomfortable by, well, not by the fact of the vampire having this both and-ness, you know what I mean? This sort of like, not gender bending, but this sort of like inside outsideness at the same time. They love that. They think that that's great. Anything that smashes categories is awesome. And I think that's also true what you said about the transhuman angle, that the vampire does have this sort of like transcending humanity kind of element to it. Those things they like, but what they don't like is when that gets twisted into something that is like inherently evil. You know what I mean? The fact that the vampire is not painted sympathetically, is not sketched out as a character, does not undergo growth, is not humanized. The fact that those things are not held up as celebratory is kind of what they don't like about it, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Because those are, because those are like, I mean, if they had their way, though, it would be those things being celebrated on screen, right? And perhaps this is why the vampire has been sexualized and turned into a romantic lead character in modernity, right? Is because they kind of want that. You know what I mean?
You just nailed it.
Yeah. And there, also what you mentioned about the ancientness of the vampire. I think that this is something that is truly scary. It's really scary to, the progressive. Really scary because they don't like anything that has lineage or is ancient or reaches back to the beginning or is ancestral. They hate all that stuff. They want to forget the past. But it's also scary for folks like us that have a more folkish outlook, because I went into this in one of the chapters in the Culture Thug Handbook, is that the very fact that the vampire has been around for centuries and millennia is exactly why he's scary. Right? Because he is just inherently superior, right? He knows more than you. He has been around. He has survived eons and eons, cycles of cycles. And that this is actually something that's very formidable, certainly to the modern, progressive or secular humanist, but also for us too, because anything ancient is just very much it's something to be. It's awful in the original sense of that term, meaning both awesome and what we think of as awful, right? It's something that's kind of sublime and scary and just big enough to crush us. And the last thing I want to mention here, sort of riffing on what it is that you said, that was a really good, rant, is that some things are just fucking evil. Some things don't have a shaft of light in them. Some things were just born bad and can never be made good by any amount of artificial tinkering with the environment. No environmentalist sort of putting them in the, soft and rounding corners kindergarten class is ever going to turn Count Orlok into a functional human being. Some things are just broken right from the start, and there's nothing you can do to fix them. And this thrownness, this sort of absolute, just brute fact of the matter is something that the creature of modernity hates, right? And this is why I recently wrote an article on Substack about, it was basically a series of reviews of children's books and movies and TV. And the things that I gave a 10 out of 10 for, both for boys and girls, I think the two things that I gave, well, there's a few, but one of them was a folktale, Rumpelstiltskin, and the other one was Aesop's Fables, right? Because Aesop's Fables hammer this home over and over again, is that some things are just born fucking evil and that there's nothing you can do to fix it. So you just need to shun those things and they need to be absolutely otherized. And, these people can't accept that. So, that's also part of the vampire story, right? Is that there's nothing good about him. He can't be understood. He doesn't have a heart of gold, sort of hidden underneath the rough hewn exterior, or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
What is that vampire movie? I don't know, whatever, the romantic thing. There's nothing like that. That's not a real thing. That's not a vampire movie. That's just a romantic movie with a sort of veneer of traditional horror. But the real traditional horror shows that it holds up that thrownness for you, and they hate it. So yeah, I think all those are very much in there. And that's part of why, it's not like this movie's getting panned left, right, and center, but it's making some people uncomfortable, not just because the cast is not diverse, but also because, of what we're saying. Some things are just evil. Ancientness is power, and the both and transness not being celebrated is makes guys uncomfortable. I think that's all in there.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to see weird sex stuff being evil. They want weird sex stuff to be whatever. And the fact that the vampire is a very erotic sexual creature, even if he's just killing and everything, there's something very erotic about it's kind of subliminal. And you obviously there's whatever. Orlok doesn't, he ain't fucking nobody. Who even knows if his schwanz works, right? He's very, very erotic and sexual and all this kind of stuff. And when we watch this, we're like, he's gross and evil and let's kill him, right? That's what we want to do. We want to kill him. So it was just really, another thing that was really fascinating to me was the kind of feminist outrage about the film. Orlok is this pedophile and how they just like, this is clearly written by a man because there's so many, the women characters don't want to, whatever that freaking thing, the rule where women don't talk to each other in the movie, they do.
Bullshit.
Yeah. Was that the Bechdel test or some? I don't forget.
That's what it is.
Yeah. It was really fascinating to me that how outraged they were when the hero of the entire film is Ellen. She's the hero.
Yeah.
Her husband Thomas is completely impotent. He does nothing right. He's like at the complete mercy of the machinations of the vampire. Not only that, he gets tricked by Willem Dafoe to go do some shit so she could fulfill her prophecy. Willem Dafoe is just kind of like on his back feet trying to figure things out. None of the men in the story make any sort of inroads towards any kind of victory. They are completely just outsmarted and outmaneuvered.
At the best, they're tools being used by this lady to kill the vampire, right?
Exactly. So, that at the end of the day, this is a battle between this woman and this creature, which has plagued her for who knows how long in her life. And she, at the end of the day, wins. She wins. She sacrifices. She does a heroic. It's very heroic. It's like it's like the woman version of a 300 thing, right?
Yeah.
She gives her life and her soul and everything to stop the curse, to save her loved ones, and to free herself of this malady, which is Nosferatu. And she's the only one that does it, right? So it's like, why are you hoes mad? The lady's the hero in this story. I don't know.
I'm going to try and answer that question because I think there is an answer to it. Now it's not a valid thing, but I think the reason why it sort of incenses them on a very unconscious level is that the female hero, the hero of this movie being a woman, what is it that she uses to win? She uses her pussy, right? That's what she uses. Yeah. And look, I've never seen a woman do anything more heroic than giving birth. If you want to see female heroism, don't go watch, Three Ninjas or whatever the fuck, like girl bossy fucking Marvel movie, girls kicking ass and like beating up 7 guys with roundhouse kicks and all the like dumb bullshit. If you want to see IRL, real fucking female heroism, watch a woman give birth. That is a real hero. And I've never gained more respect for a woman than I gained respect for my wife when I watched her give birth. And it was really actually quite an emotional experience, not just watching my child be born, but watching this woman that I love do something that was like, holy shit, like that's amazing. Like, wow, I'm proud of you kind of thing. Right. And I think that it really incenses the feminists that on a very unconscious level, that this woman wins by her sexuality. Her sexuality is her weapon. That's her source of heroism, just like it is for women for real. You know what I mean? I think that's probably why they don't like it. Now, I don't think that they are aware of this, but I think on some gut level, they realize that that is the source of Ellen's power and that really pisses them off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's funny to me how little self-awareness they have, because they'll get mad about that. But when they go protest, the first thing they do is get naked. They always get naked.
Put on a pussy hat.
or put on a pussy hat. It's like, let's I don't know. I just think
let's prove them right in every way that we can without trying.
Yeah. And then pretend that we're not. Yeah. It's goofy. Another part of the vampire archetype that I think Nosferatu really puts forth very, very well is kind of how can I say this? The human relationship to mortality. Right. This is in all kind of vampire stuff. It's not really out there that much, but I can't remember what the line is, but he says something I think he says it to Ernok, right? Ernok he's like, yes, lives. Yes, my lord. Right, all this kind of shit. When he's doing all that, he's like, I was to be the king of rats. Like he he wanted immortality, right? That was his whole shtick, was he's in this because he thinks that Orlok is going to gift him something, right? And obviously that goes wrong for him. But what this like out anyway, there's a line where he says, like, you can't possibly understand what I understand, or something. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he like smacks him in the face. Is like, don't monkey with my stuff. You can't understand what I understand. Something like that, right? And what he's pretty much saying is, and Mike touched on this a little bit before, but I wanted to kind of dig into it a little deeper, was the vampire, Orlok, and any other type of, we could talk about like elves in Lord of the Rings, or, any type of person, humanoid, intelligent thing that has a different kind of lifespan than us is going to see the world completely different. The vampire has a completely different understanding of reality because it has a completely different relationship with its own mortality, right? You can't possibly understand the world how he understands just by, you can't learn it. You can't be enlightened into it. There's nothing, he can't even like give this to you, right? He can't even really give you this. There's nothing you can do to understand the world how he understands it, because in however many decades you are going to die, and every waking moment of your existence, you are, whether or not you're consciously aware of this, you are always aware of this. You have a very distinct, specific understanding of your own lifespan at all times. And this colors everything about how you see the world, how you see how you see anything, how you feel experiences, how you view pleasure, how you view pain, how you view hardship, how you view everything. People don't. This is something that people don't think about until you think about, well, what if I lived 300 years? What if I lived 1,000 years? How would I think about the taste of steak? How would I think about falling in love? How would I think about smoking a cigarette? How would I think about going for a jog? How would I think about anything? How would I think about a movie? How would I think about my favorite color? Everything, anything that you like interpret or consider, or anything that goes through your brain would go through a completely different internal framework, because you have a entirely different relationship with your own mortality. That relationship with your own mortality is such a humongous part of your being and how you see the world. And what the vampire is in these types of things is not, he doesn't explain it to you, because he can't explain it to you. He can't transfer that to you. But what you can see is how he moves and how he behaves, right? In this, what's fascinating in Nosferatu is he's very aware of what's happening. He's very aware that he's going to his doom in the thing. He's like, I am but an appetite. He's like, he knows what's happening. He knows because he's done this before. He knows that this is just part of his cycle of existence. Is that, every however long a woman like this comes up, he gets obsessed with her and he has to go, like, this is his process of his doom. But it's not over for him. It just, as they mentioned in the movie, casts him back into the darkness, right? What is the darkness? We don't know. We don't know what the darkness means. Could be the other world, could be the underworld, could be wherever. He gets cast somewhere other until it's time for him to come back. And he knows this throughout the entire film. And he can't explain to anybody why he goes through it. He just understands. He probably understands on a level that he just can't put into words. A regular like me or you would be like, yo, Orlok, why are you even doing this? Just don't fucking do that. That's going to kill you. Whatever. But he would be like, silence. You do not understand, right? I cannot make you understand, mortal, right? You can't understand that because he has a completely different, it's just one of those things that's I don't know. It's just vibes. Dude, I can't explain that to you. Are you fucking out of your mind? It's like, he can't, it might even be beyond your comprehension. It might be something that can't be put into words. Imagine you going to, let's say your dog can talk and your dog is going to be completely different. Your dog only lives 10, 12, 13 years, maybe, right? Imagine explaining to your dog, what it feels like to turn 30 years old, right? Imagine trying to explain to your dog what it feels like, to grow up and, have your first girlfriend or something like that. Dogs don't understand that. He can't understand that. He's just like, well, when I turn 2, I just start humping stuff, and then I hope I find it. And that's like the totality of their. They can't even comprehend romance. They're just trying to, break one off. They're just trying to break one off before they die, right? It's like it's a real frantic thing for them because they have much shorter lifespans than us. He's never going to understand romance because he can't. So imagine that on a much higher level, and that is the vampire. And this is showing us and reminding us that we have a very important relationship with our own mortality.
Yeah, and it's also reminding us that there's a kind of incommensurability between different agents, different moral agents, even though the vampire is not a moral agent, and that's part of the horror, right? That's why it's in the same way that a bear is not a moral agent. You know what I mean? If it's in your vicinity, you fucking kill it, right? Before it kills you. There's no moral sense. But anyway, they're different kinds of agent, radically different kinds of thing. And that there's no bridge between them, right? Between the human and the vampire. I mean, there's some, obviously they can communicate and have a contract and understand each other to some degree, but there's a bridge, right? There's an unbridgeable gap between them, between Jonathan or not Jonathan, Thomas and Count Orlok, or between Ellen and Count Orlok. There's an unbridgeable gap, right? Because they're just fundamentally different modes of being between them. Like there's a famous line from Wittgenstein where he says, if a lion could speak, we couldn't understand him, right? Mm-hmm. Because the lion has a completely different mode of being, has a different, subjectivity, a different sort of aesthetic, understanding of the world and all of that, right? Its experience is completely radically different to us. So even if a lion could speak English, what would he even say to us? There'd be almost nothing, right? And I think that this is there, and it kind of reminds people it reminds the viewer that there are sort of othernesses, there are other perspectives, other ways of being, that there's basically nothing in between. There's nothing that we have in common with them, between us and a moth or whatever. You could think, between the human being and the moth, there's if you look at just the audible range between those two, we actually exist in completely different worlds. Like we can only hear up to about 20K frequency range, and that's below the lowest frequency range that the moth can hear. We exist in completely different worlds, right? And what I'm saying here is that the vampire reminds us that universalism is wrong, that universalism isn't right, that there are incommensurabilities between things, and this is why we consider that evil. And there's a very folkish element to that, where evil is just what is outside of your moral horizon, right? Something that has no moral consideration, something that is not you, that is radically other. And I think that makes people very uneasy, not just progressives, not just these people with an idiotic political worldview. It makes all of us uncomfortable because it reminds us that there are things out there that are radically other than us. You could think about this, and again, we're kind of coming back to, I keep bringing it back to Lovecraft, because I really do think that cosmic horror is kind of like the cardinal form that horror has taken in modernity, right? Because doing all the same things sort of in the modern vein. But anyway, you could think about what it would be like to encounter an alien species. Well, it wouldn't be all Star Trek like, would it? Right? It wouldn't be just like a meeting of the minds and we're just different things and we all have the same, we're all kind of the same, underneath our skin or whatever. It's nothing like that. It would be like something that is just like, kill it with fire, it's so other that it's like, just get it away from me. I don't even want to think about it. I don't even know about it. Right. That would be the reaction of any normal, healthy person.
The Xenos.
Yeah, exactly. Xeno, other, this is the radical otherness of it. So it's the same with the vampire on another level, right? And I think that's very right. Another thing I wanted to mention before we kind of, unless Dave's got some more big takes to throw down here, I wanted to mention something that I noticed in the film, sort of at the very end. It dawned on me, no pun intended, that we have these sort of ancestral memories that seem to worm their way into our stories. Things that sort of come back, whether we want them to or not, and whether we try or not, they just kind of appear spontaneously, that they arise kind of from our breast, like our folk soul remembers these things and they come back in our stories. And this is something that actually I noticed in Nosferatu, was that there is a very strong parallel with what you get in Tolkien. There's that story, or there's that scene in The Hobbit where they've gone out of the Shire. It's really their first time, I think, encountering a real monster outside of the Shire, where they encounter those trolls sitting around the bonfire. And then I forget exactly what happens, but one of the hobbits gets seized by the troll, and then the other hobbits are scrambling around trying desperately to save him, but they're huge, and these monsters, they don't know what to do. And all of a sudden there's a riddle contest that breaks out, right? And long story short, the riddle contest goes on and on and on and on until the sun rises and the trolls are destroyed by the sun. And that this is something that actually that's basically the sort of larger scale narrative arc in Nosferatu, right? Which is that they decide, or Ellen sort of realizes, and then also confers between herself and the Willem Dafoe character, that's what they have to do. Basically, that they are going to, not only is she going to lure him there for a sexual liaison, but also that they're going to trick Thomas, her boyfriend, and all that, her fiance, into going into to destroying his crypt, to destroying his, the grave that he goes and rests in the morning, so that there's no respite for him. There's no place for him to go. And he gets, he basically gets exposed to the sun, and this is what kills him finally. And it's very interesting because not only over the course of the movie, like you start out and you're introduced to Count Orlok, and he's standing in the shadows and you can't see him. He's just standing at that courtyard or whatever at the entrance to the castle, and you can't see anything. It's just a silhouette. And then progressively over the course of the movie, it shows you more and more. Like you go into his lair, into his castle, and you can kind of see a few like little things here and there flickering by firelight. And then progressively over the course of the movie, you can kind of see his face more and more. And the monster gets revealed slowly over the course of the entire 2-hour film. And then at the very end, he gets like shot through with this sunlight, and you can see him just clear as day. And there is a real, like, you only really get a good look at him at the end. And the blazing sunlight creates this massive contrast with the rest of the movie. So I thought that was really cool. But also, you get this deep sort of resonance with that motif in Tolkien, which he took from the Poetic Edda. It comes directly from Alvismol, right? Where the monster is tricked into seeing the sunrise. And also in Alvismol, which is not in Tolkien, there's the element of the marriage, right? Where what's happening in Alvismol is that Thor is, has basically pledged his daughter to this elf called Allwise or Alvis, and he's having a riddle contest with Alvis and basically peppering him with questions and being like, if you want to marry my daughter, you got to prove that you're wise. And he keeps asking him a question. Allwise keeps, he's got an answer for every single question Thor can throw at him. Everything is, he's wise, right? He has the knowledge. He's been around forever. He knows all these things. He knows the names of everything. He is wise in all these, in the same way that the vampire kind of is. But it turns out that all wise is not wise in the end, because Thor has tricked him and kept him up all night. And then he gets petrified by the sunlight. And I think that I don't think that was something that was intended either by Eggers or the original writers of Nosferatu, but it is amazing how clear as day, again, no pun intended, how clear it is that they have those resonances between the stories. I just, when it hit me at the end of the movie, I was just like, it's so perfect. It's almost like it had to be. I don't know. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. That's the pot of soup, right? The cauldron of stories. That these ancient motifs, these things are just in the broth. And every time you pull out your ladle, it's the same ingredients are there, and it's not stuff that you consciously think about, but it's always there. It's really this goes to do a lot of things, right? You mentioned about Alvis, like the all wise. Alvis, this is what you mentioned about Alvis. He remembers these things because he was there. He's all wise because he experienced all of these. This is in contrast to the human understanding of history and human wisdom, right? And the vampire has the same exact thing as Alvis. The vampire has a different understanding of history, has a different type of wisdom. He has experiential wisdom, as opposed to humans who understand history through record keeping and art and artifacts and tradition and stuff like that. We weren't there for it. It gets, we inherit our understanding of history. Unlike the vampire who was there, he witnessed it. So he has a completely different type of wisdom, right? But what this shows over and over again is that with this motif is that this wisdom can lead to hubris, and that it oftentimes falls victim to the cunning of those who are in the now, right? The vampire is not necessarily in the now. He is in the now, but he's also in the back then too, right? He has a foot in both times. he kind of transcends times just by the nature of his lifespan. And humanity doesn't have that, right? So maybe it's because we have more RAM to expend in the now that we can cook up more cunning and deceptive tactics. Whereas the vampire, when he concocts his machinations, they are these like long, brooding over centuries types of plans that happen, right? And he carries them out slowly and patiently and everything like that. Whereas the human doesn't have that luxury. He doesn't have that ability. So the vampire, in his hubris, thinks that, there's no way these little humans or these little hobbits or Thor or anybody can, you can't fuck with my wisdom. I was there, right? Well, you fucked around and found out. You didn't, you underestimated your opponent, because your opponent because they're so footed in the now, unlike you, they were able to cobble together something that you didn't foresee. You were so sold. And this kind of goes against what I was saying earlier, that he's sort of victim of fate. He's at the mercy of fate and aware of it. Let's say that this is of his machination, right? And I think that there's an aspect of this. Could be both, right? The vampire.
Yeah, it could easily be both. But yeah, go on.
Be both. But in his like view, I was there. I transcend your puny lifespans. I am immortal, right? In his hubris of this, and his kind of he's kind of like the nerd too, right? The nerd is so sold, and he can't get past the idea of the plot that he came up with. He can't think on the fly. Maybe he can, but he thinks that it's inferior, right? You're thinking on the fly. Your skin of the teeth. Your thing is just like rats scurrying about compared to my magnificent grand plan. And this happens a lot with villains in movies and storytelling, as if these villains on high underestimate the hero and his ability to think on his feet and trick the hubris villain, right? So this is a motif that happens quite a bit, and many stories, is the villain on high with his long-standing, long-running machinations. He's a nerd that can't think outside of his procedures and everything. And then the Chad, who's like, fuck it, I'm just going to try this. And it works. Right. So it goes to show, this might be a reach, but what's coming to mind now is like Elon Musk and his whole thing about the H-1B visas and all that. He's just being a fucking nerd, and he can't think outside the box. You know what I mean? He's so sold on these procedures. He's such a rigid thinker that he's like losing track of human nature. He's not thinking of things in terms of human nature and humanity and the kind of the immaterial needs of humans. He can only think in terms of economic units and numbers and things like this. This is why you can't let nerds be in charge, because they don't understand human nature, and they'll never be able to construct something that contours and serves human nature. They can only create rigid systems, and they become so like they become almost religiously devoted to carrying out their systems and their procedures, that the human element gets lost. And in their hubris, they pay the price. They get turned to stone. They are obliterated by the purifying light of the sun, right? The conquering sun, the sunlight that comes and purifies all, purifies the winter, purifies everything. The sun is the conquering sun is a returning motif over and over and over again forever until the end of time, right? It casts away the darkness, it casts away the night, casts away the winter, casts away. It is healing. It is purifying. It is reckoning. Right. So there's a lot there. I kind of like threw a bunch of different things in there, but you guys don't.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, you know, the bug utilitarian sort of worldview that the technocrat has is it's incomplete, and it actually kind of dovetails a little bit with some of the stuff that we said on the vibe shift episode a few episodes back, right, with Trump, where Trump's not that at all. Trump doesn't, like, you know, the bug utilitarian, which is kind of like exemplified by Kamala Harris and the Biden administration, and this like rule by abstract procedure and everything. These people, they look at somebody like Trump that is the opposite, and he relates through people, and his understanding of the world is a people oriented understanding, is a concrete personality driven understanding of the world. They look at those people like fucking aliens. They don't understand it at all. But you know what? The fact is that if you don't understand that people are tribal and that people have personal loyalty and they don't give a shit about abstractions at the end of the day, like most normal, healthy people do not fucking care about freedom, about, you know, like fairness, about opportunity, about any of this shit. They just care about, you know, getting theirs and getting theirs for their family too, right? That's what they care. Is about, like, you know, basically enriching and doing right by their guys, right? Folkishness, basically. This is what has driven people since the beginning of time. And no matter how like, you know, rational or hard-headed or scientific or technocratic anybody is, if they don't understand that, like, other people and that society fundamentally is driven by this folkishness, then they're the irrational one. They're the one whose worldview is defective and stupid, right? Because they haven't taken into account that part of the equation, right? The sort of like, you know, the spontaneity and, like, you know, personal loyalty and everything like that. All these things that make us human, right? And it goes back again to this whole the archetypal sort of jousting between those two personalities, which is between Thor and Alvis, right? Because Alvis is this all-wise elf that's seen everything and is kind of that bug personality. Like, that's kind of degrading it, you know, somewhat. But, you know, at a lower level, at a sort of more, you know, condensed level, that is really what it is, you know, the Elon Musk versus the Chad kind of Thor figure, right? Like, Thor represents that non-technocratic figure that is the true sovereign, is really actually jocks that need to be sovereign over the nerds. Like, this whole trajectory of the last 40 years of Revenge of the Nerds is completely fucking backwards. It's never worked. It's never been the case in history for more than a short period of disastrous historical unfolding. And it's going to go back. It's going to, you know, ultimately the Thor character is going to be the sovereign, and the Alvis is going to be a pillar of stone. You know, like, it's going to go back there, basically. So anyway, I think that's right. I think that there is an element of that in this story, and I think that's right about, like, you know, Musk and the technocratic elite and everything. And I think they're gonna get a rude fucking awakening one of these days when somebody who steps onto the scene that's kind of like one of them actually does understand these things. When somebody does understand the nature of personal loyalty and everything. I know this has carried us pretty far afield from Nosferatu, but all this stuff is there. All this stuff is lurking in the background of this movie, right? Like, you know, the unpredictable element of Ellen, the humanistic element, the element that loves, the element that will sacrifice, the element that is for her family, for her people, for her, you know, way of life, versus the count that is just this kind of automatic algorithmic thing that just kind of exists as a process and nothing more. I am an appetite and nothing more. Keep coming back to that, right?
Yeah.
That's in there. it's part of it, and it's not that far below the surface if you have the analysis to look there.
Yeah. And one thing you mentioned that I want to bring it back to Nosferatu is you said that the people that have this procedural, the bug understanding, that they're just procedural appetite, and that we view like appetite, like the animalistic part of the human being, as this kind of like wildfire, chaotic kind of thing, but it's really, really not. It's very, very procedural.
It's quite predictable.
It's quite predictable. You got to eat, you got to take a crap, you got to sleep, you got to, you got to satisfy your carnal desires. These are things that need to be satiated either every day or every couple days or like whatever, right? These things can be scheduled, right? Yeah. They are procedure. They are probably why the bugman likes them so much, because they can be scheduled, right? And I would go further. You said that the bug, the Nosferatu, sees the humanistic Chad as alien. Not only just alien, I would think that they see them as inferior, right? That's why they have such a meltdown when they lose. It's like, how could we have lost to these idiots, these backwards, these rednecks, these this, these that, right? They're outraged that how could these like cavemen, these lower life forms, like usurp us, right? Can you imagine if like some jock Chad guy usurped Klaus Schwab, the absolute temper tantrum he would have?
Yeah.
How dare he? But at the end of the day, he totally could, right? You get a guy that has got enough Chad energy. He could take, like, Klaus Schwab is cooked. That guy got nothing, right? That guy's Nosferatu, right? Nosferatu is the bug. Nosferatu, while he's kind of seen as this outsideness, a little bit of chaos, he is chaos or whatever. I think that there's an interesting paradox insofar as true chaos is that which is too much order, right? That which is that goes too far.
It's dead, right? It's like the ultimate order is death, where there is no spark of life there. There's no spontaneity. There's no soul. There's no anything. It's just automatic processes of decay going over and over and over again.
Exactly. We could, like, decay is like one of those things, decay and death, like what the processes that happen in death and decay can be like timed, right? You could, it is so measurable. There, unlike life, which is much less measurable. So I think that there's, we're digging into something that we probably got to think on a little more, but, there's a lot here, right? Nosferatu is the bug. Nosferatu is Klaus Schwab. And it's maybe the lib hates Nosferatu in this movie so much because it's such a mirror, which is what they really, really don't like. And like Nosferatu and like the vampire, when the lib looks in the mirror, they see nothing. No reflection, because they lack the ability of self-reflection.
Yeah. Well, it occurs to me that this entire episode has basically been one sort of this episode of Culture Dads has been one sort of exercise in exactly what we're saying, where at the beginning we talked about the different approaches to cooking between Dave and Mike, and it looks like the procedural automatic Mike, way of doing things is actually the worst way, and that the Dave that hasn't the Thor Dave that hasn't tried to put Mike in checkmate has done it automatically or done it by accident. So, I think that this whole episode has basically recapitulated that whole idea. So
no, you ain't Nosferatu. Nah, I don't like.
I'm a very procedural cook. That's the way I like to do things.
That's cool. That's good. Some procedure is good. Yeah, some procedure is good. but we're saying like too much. That which is So that's what I mean. I don't want to end with my boy getting compared to Nosferatu. That don't sit right with me.
No, but it was, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was really cool. It's probably the best one that you'll see this year. Not that I watch many movies anymore in the theater, but there's like some sort of plot construction elements to it. The dialogue didn't quite sparkle like I really wanted it to. There was some elements that could have been improved, but overall, it's a very faithful, rendering of this immortal story, this story that will live forever of the vampire, which is a much older story even than Christendom, but it's got that flavor to it. Eggers really puts it in there. It looks beautiful. It's told faithfully, and there's all this stuff underneath the surface if you care to look. So I would totally recommend guys go see it. It may not be the Godfather tier movie that we all wanted, but it's still pretty good, and you're going to be entertained, and you'll probably think on it, and there'll be some cool stuff that comes out of it. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Yeah. It's not a masterpiece, but it's very good. 4 out of 5. You won't be mad. As long as you go in there with expectations tempered. It's a movie. It's pretty tough to like put out a movie now and have it be a masterpiece. Compared to that, if this movie came out in say like 1992 or 1987 or something like that, we would probably give it a different rating. But among its peers, it's a lot better and so much better than all the other new movies that are coming out. So
it just rates, especially because it's like, it just doesn't remind you of pause. There's no pause in it. It's completely pause free. So that in itself is a recommendation.
Yeah, it is. It's a good movie. It's a good movie. You guys are going to like it. 4 out of 5. So go check it out. Nosferatu. And if you can, dude, go watch the original one. At least watch some of the most iconic scenes from it, so you can see some of the visual motifs that Eggers reemploys for his remake. So lots of great stuff. Such an influential film. I'm actually not mad that this one got remade. There's a lot of films that I'm like, we didn't need that. Let's leave that one sit. Right. I wasn't mad at this one. This one I think was pretty important to put this one back out so people didn't forget about it.
Yeah.
So anyway,
sure.
That's my take. This is where we at here. So that's it. Nosferatu, guys, go check it out. Go watch it. Form your own opinion. Let us know. How much of what we talked about here do you agree with? Do you disagree? Did you hate the movie? Do you love it? Do you think we're being too hard on it? Let us know. But anyway, like always, guys, if you're not signed up already, make sure to go over to Culture Dads. It's culture with a K, culturedads.com. You get signed up to the Gumroads. You get so many great perks. Just hardback copies of the Imperium Press catalog, which will soon include Never Say Die. So go over there, get signed up, get Never Say Die, get all your hardback copies to sit on your shelf forever and ever. And you get Culture Dads every single week. You can't beat it. So go over there, get signed up. Check out what I'm doing over at thebizarchives.com. Also on Twitter and Telegram at thebizarchives, as well as Hearth Fire Radio. New episodes of The Bog are up. New episodes of everything are up. You got lots of new stuff coming in. So go get signed up over there. Only $12, less than a pizza a month. So go get signed up over there. Shout out to our big dog patron, Mr. Marvin from Deutschland. Hails and blessings to him, and hails and blessings to all you dads out there. I will see you next time here on Culture Dad's Age of Sword and Cassette.